Great.
Yeah, I think there's a direct correlation from like financial trouble to even intimacy issues because, in my opinion, I think it's mostly due to resentment, fear, or I think there's a direct correlation from like financial trouble to even intimacy issues because, in my opinion, I think it's mostly due to resentment, fear, or trust problems.
You're listening to Get Your Marriage On, the fun and spicy podcast bringing you new tools and fresh ideas so that you can be the sexiest couple you know.
There are so many parallels between money and intimacy, especially when it comes to marriage. For many people, money represents security. When money issues crop up, it can threaten our ability to trust our spouse. Issues revolving around spending habits in a marriage can add a lot of stress to the relationship. We also bring to a marriage two different worldviews on money, creating an opportunity for growth, if you choose to look at it that way, requiring both people to lean into each other and to get more honest with each other when it comes to spending and earning and money. Today, I interviewed Juli and Thomas from The Marriage Puzzle. They are marriage coaches who help others overcome pain points around money, intimacy, and communication so that they can go from feeling overwhelmed to feeling secure in their marriage. Thomas and Juli, it's such a pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
Thanks so much for having us. We are excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks again.
Thanks. Before we recorded this, we were just chit-chatting, and you told me this, it's really important that we tell parents to lock the door. Can you tell us why?
Yeah, so we had planned early morning. We set our alarm to be intimate with each other. We thought before the kids woke up, was we've kind of learned if we're too tired at night, then we can kind of rain check for the morning and be exciting. And so, luckily Thomas got up and locked the door and we had our time. But then we went downstairs to face our 8-year-old and he said, Mommy, why was your door locked this morning? Like, what? I don't even think we answered him. We just kind of changed the subject because he didn't knock. So we don't know how long he was standing there, but I really am glad that the door was locked because he definitely knew that it was locked.
And we thought we knew what time they woke up in the morning. So we'd set our alarm ahead of that to make sure we gave ourselves enough time. But apparently they decided to get up extra early that day. And so then we had that little run in.
It's funny how the universe conspires against you every time you have plans for each other.
Yeah. Or just kids conspire against you. That's part of it too.
I'll explain it when you're older.
Yeah. Right. So I brought you on because I want to hear your story. I want everyone to hear your story. You've had some big money problems in the past. I want to learn what they were and how you dealt with it. How did it drive the two of you apart? And how did you rebuild your relationship through it all?
Yeah. We had some money issues. We owned a business back from 2008 to 2016. And during that time, I was the one who was primarily handling our finances on a personal front and on the business front. And so, we went through some struggles with the business and got behind on some bills. And, I was just trying to figure out ways to make it happen. And because I was the one primarily managing the finances, Juli wasn't really in the know about it. And, so I just carried that burden knowing how rough things really were for us. And got to a point where I just kind of had a breakdown about it. I mean, it wasn't that I was misspending funds or anything like that. I wasn't doing anything wrong with the money. It was just there wasn't enough to be able to make it happen. And, I didn't want her to bear the burden of that failure that was happening. And so I just bear the burden myself. And then, the mental breakdown happened to me from it, and it finally all got out in the open. Which, go ahead.
Yeah, we were married. This was like 7 years into our marriage, and we were living a lifestyle with the business and, eating out because I didn't want to cook and just kind of living life. And we had decided to become parents and had twins our first pregnancy. So we
Congratulations.
inserted 2 babies. And they were about a year old when this happened, I guess, the pivotal point of our marriage. So
Mhm.
there's definitely a parenting, season and shift in your marriage. And then, a few months after that, we probably had our biggest fight ever
Mhm.
as Thomas sat me down and, peacefully tried to share where we were in our finances, but hearing that we were at rock bottom and me not knowing that, and that I felt like we had a chance to change our lifestyle. But he tried to protect me from that. But when he opened up, I just felt like such a secret had been kept from me. And it wasn't even about the finances.
Mhm.
It was about our lack of communication and just trust and fear, and all kinds of issues came out. And we've had to work through that for another 7 years to date now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're at about 15 and a half years into our marriage now.
Right. And, once we were really in the middle of that most intense part of it, we realized that, we really needed each other. I mean, I realized that mostly because, I was keeping this from her, again, not to try to be deceitful, but just, to try to be the protector. I mean, that's what I felt like my role in the marriage was supposed to be. I was supposed to be the protector of my wife and the family, and this was an issue that I had to protect them from. And so I just had to
Gotcha.
figure it out on my own. And so, I had to learn that getting the help from her was actually going to be more beneficial. Having 2 brains to kind of think through the problem was going to be better than just mine, obviously, because it wasn't working the way I was trying to do it. And so, getting her to help out with that was really important.
So, Thomas, just curious, what were you afraid of? Why were you afraid to tell Julie, before everything blew up?
I would
You mentioned
say,
protect her, but it sounds like you're trying to protect her from feelings, some unpleasant feelings.
yeah, probably, feelings of fear that, we weren't going to make it, or, we didn't know where the next meal was going to come from or anything like that. And, I don't ever think we got to that point, but it could have gotten there pretty quickly if I just let it keep going on. But yeah, I mean, I just wanted her to protect her from having to feel that fear that I was actually feeling, because I felt like, well, there's no reason for 2 of us to have that fear. At least she can go on with her day and not feel that. And so I really think that that's where it was coming from for me.
And so, Julie, I'm just curious, like when that's revealed to you, did you feel like he was protecting you?
No, I felt really betrayed, honestly.
Yes. All right.
It was like the worst feeling I've ever felt in our marriage, and I never want to feel that again. Because like I said, it wasn't about the money then. Like that, you were afraid, and I was like, that's fine if that's what it is. I just needed to know the facts. I didn't know that's what it was. But the fact that he held back those facts and emotions and everything, that's why I felt, not that he straight up lied to my face, but it was the same feelings because he wasn't fully honest with me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
I think that's what I had to work through more in our relationship, as we pulled out of the debt and money struggles. But I think that was a pivotal point in our marriage as we look back, again, not just because of money, but we had to choose, like you were saying, to lean into each other.
Mm-hmm.
But it could
We were
have put
forced
a
to.
wedge between us and split us apart.
Yeah.
And now I get why money problems are kind of, one of the leading causes of divorce. It's just because it can totally split you apart just in that one conversation.
Yeah. And we realized that, we had just had twins, and that, we thought that the twins were causing some issues other issues, not that it was their fault, I should rephrase that, that having the twins created some other problems in intimacy and communication. We realized that, looking back on it, that we were just in a survival mode as parents as well, trying to feed two more mouths and, keep two babies alive when we're exhausted. And, we realized looking back that our communication really just became tactical. Who was feeding who next, who needed the diaper change, who had been sleeping the longest, whose turn it was to sleep out of the two of us, who got to eat the hot meal tonight and who got to eat the cold meal, and, things like that. So our communication became very tactical. But as we get the opportunity to look back on all of it, the real root for us was the money issues. And the money issues really magnified the issues in the other areas. Because when you have a baby, those other issues in communication and intimacy are going to naturally, you're going to have some slowdowns in those, because you have to reconfigure your family. You have to rework your routines and everything around that child. And so we thought that was the cause, but really what the cause was the money issues that we were having, and the tension between us from there. And that caused the issues to be magnified in the other areas. And so what we've come to realize is that, we believe that a marriage is really built on three major areas in your life: money, sex, and communication. And so if any one of those legs is broken, in our case, like the finances were, it makes it really difficult or near impossible for the other two to keep the marriage standing. If one of those legs is weakened, then there's going to be extra stress in one of those areas that's going to cause the stool to not sit properly. And so, we just love that visual and how much it plays a part. And obviously there are, all kinds of other dynamics in marriage, but we really feel like those are three really primary keys. And we believe that to be true for sure.
Cool. So I got this message on Instagram yesterday. This woman writes saying, "How can my husband and I learn to take care of our finances without fighting? We're lost. We've tried a lot of different things, but it's always an argument. And we'd love to see things differently." What advice would you give this person?
So I think the first thing I would say is just great job on reaching out somewhere and asking for help. Even if it's just a message to somebody, she's reached out and asked for help in some way. And that's the first step that you can take. And that was what really helped us when we went through our financial troubles. We found a class called Financial Peace University that we went through. And that really helped us, give us the tools to turn things around. I would definitely recommend that class, but only if they're both going to do it together.
Gotcha.
Otherwise,
and did you both do it together?
We did.
Yes.
Yeah, we both took that together. We've actually done it a few times
Like
now,
3
3 or
times.
4 times now. It's always a good refresher. But the first step, asking for help, is great. But it sounds like they need to have a budget meeting together. Sounds like they need to kind of start working on this together. One of the things that we've been teaching recently is finances can be such a tense area in marriages, because you often have one person in the couple who's that natural, just drawn towards doing the finances, and the other person who just really isn't. They really just don't care. Not that they don't care what's happening, but it's just not their thing. And so they'll tend to let the other person do it. And what we found is that if you need to talk about it together, you need to schedule a time to talk about that together. Because if you approach your spouse really in just about any topic, right? But, especially with money, and say, "Hey, we need to talk about your spending." Well, now their walls are up. Now
Right.
they're on the defense, and now it's going to be a fight because, they have to fire back. But if you can say, "Hey, could we talk about this on Tuesday at 4:00, or once the kids go to bed on Wednesday night," or something like that, then they can be mentally prepared and come to the conversation in the right state of mind to really try to be present. And hopefully it won't turn into a fight, or at least it won't start off as a fight.
Great.
Yeah, we do those meetings frequently, and we set a time limit for them,
That's
because
good too.
when you are not used to talking about finances and it already is a fight, like Thomas said, nobody wants to come to that meeting in the first place. But
Right.
when it's scheduled and you know what you need to accomplish, but I mean, start small, like a 15-20 minute max, and that's enough. And you're not going to get through everything, so
Just
you're not going
tackle
to feel like
one
it's
thing.
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
And then call it good and just move on with your night. And then the next, Tuesday at 4, whatever the standing meeting is, do it again for the same, 20 minutes, and you'll get a little bit further. But having that, like, I was the one that I wasn't interested, in coming to those. I didn't care to talk about money. But then when we hit rock bottom, and we decided to do it together, that still was very draining for me. And we fought a lot. It was like, oh, we're doing this for an hour. Can we be done with this? And so once we hit those boundaries of like, hey, we're just going to talk about this for 20 minutes and move on, then that was, a pill I could swallow and then be excited to do that, show up ready, and then be done until the next week. And so I think bite-sized pieces like that with scheduling and time frames would be helpful too.
Yeah.
Do you think that pattern applies to one of the other two stools of the marriage, the communication and sex? Like, what's the correlation with money and improving a sex life?
I mean, money is really one of the most intimate topics in any relationship, right? I mean, it's not often that you're at a dinner party or something and you're all talking about how much income you make or anything like that. That topic rarely comes up in any area of our lives except within our household. And so because it's such an intimate area that we don't share with anybody else, I mean, I can't say it's just like being in the bedroom, but it's not like, most people aren't broadcasting their bedroom relationship to the world.
No.
You don't necessarily just open the windows and tell your neighbors, hey, come watch us, so it's a private, intimate thing in the bedroom, just like your finances are. And so your spouse is really the only one that you would actually talk to about that. And there may be a few other people like a coach or, a financial advisor or someone like that who may be able to give you a little outside perspective. But on the deepest levels, your spouse is the only one that's going to know everything about your past with money. And so as you do like what Julie was saying and start building those foundational conversations, have little wins in your conversations about money, what are you doing? You're communicating about it. So you're naturally strengthening your communication skills as well. And so, you may not actively be trying to work on communication, but because you're talking about these other intimate areas, then you're going to naturally strengthen that. And, if anyone's listening has ever looked into your app and see all the talking points about the bedroom, it's the same thing. If you're starting there and you're really having small conversations to get the ball rolling to improve your intimacy, you're naturally building your communication as well and getting better at that too.
Great.
Yeah, I think there's a direct correlation from like financial trouble to even intimacy issues, because in my opinion, I think it's mostly due to resentment, fear, or trust problems, because that was our experience too. We then, I thought it was because of becoming new parents and everything. But when we had money problems, we also then would look back on like this dry spell of our intimacy. And we had to learn how to talk about all of that and just realize we had been pulling up away from each other physically because of even like the financial stress and everything that was happening. And so, I would say once we got that in order, like our sex life has like drastically improved too. And I think it's just because there's this freedom and safety, and they just like all go hand in hand, and we can even celebrate that from communication and money and intimacy.
Yeah, it's hard to make love, and I mean that, like heartfelt, love making, if you don't feel free with the person you're with.
Yeah.
If you feel guarded, does that makes sense?
Yeah.
And it's absolutely true. If there's any trust or fear issues surrounding some of those other topics, specifically finances, then yeah, you're not going to trust them with the most intimate area of your relationship. And so, then doing it is really just checking it off the to-do list, because it's a part of your marriage and you have to. But that's really a recipe for disaster too. You have to fix the underlying issues to improve your intimacy.
Great. Okay, so what would you say are the 3 biggest problems couples face with money?
Yeah, the first problem that we've seen is not knowing where the money went each month.
Tracking expenses.
Exactly. We say, you've got to tell your money where to go, and instead of wondering what happened at the end of each month. And that goes by setting a budget of what you're going to do and spend. That was the first thing that we had to do, and sit down and figure out, this is what we make, and this is as far as it'll get us. And then it takes what, like 3 months to kind of try out a budget. It wasn't perfect the first month, but
if you're not used to doing a budget and you're trying to get started in it, you need to give yourself a solid 3 months to start feeling like you're in a groove. The first month's probably going to be pretty sloppy. You're going to forget stuff. You're going to judge how much you spend in certain areas. Month 2, you'll get to make some tweaks and make it better. And then month 3, you'll start feeling like you're kind of hitting your stride and start lining those things out in the proper way. And then from that point on, you'll be kind of maintaining it and tweaking it. But, you have to give yourself room and permission to fail in those first few months when you're really getting going with doing a budget.
Yeah. And then the second problem we've seen is different spending habits. Sounds like the person who wrote you on Instagram. I think that's a shocker for a lot of couples. They feel so different from their spouse. And that's usually the case. Usually one's more naturally a spender and one's naturally a saver.
That's normal.
It's totally normal. I have yet to find a couple that like perfectly they spend money the same way.
Well, yeah, because they're probably broke and they don't they're not married anymore. But I say that in jest. But
and even sexually, you have a higher desire spouse and a lower desire spouse for sex. You have a higher desire for spending and a lower desire for spending or saving. Just as you have for cleanliness and parenting and
I think that's like, people feel like it's conflict, but it's totally normal. Like, I'm more of the spender and he's more of the saver. And knowing that about each other, I think one is key. And then figuring out how to value that.
Yeah, you just have to embrace it. Embrace who your spouse is. And I think that applies in other areas of life as well, but especially in the spender saver category. As the saver in our relationship, I'm always looking at Julie like, why are you spending this? Why don't you want to keep it? And she's always looking at me like, why are you so boring and you just want to keep the money? You don't go do anything for yourself. And so, we have to embrace that with one another. And, I can teach her how we can have money later in life by saving some of it. And she can teach me how to have some fun right now by spending some of it. And once we find that proper balance, we can move forward together and we can have the best of both worlds.
And that balance is going to be different for depending on the couple, depending on the season in life and all sorts of things. So
yeah, which circling back, that's why those budget meetings come in such good handy, because as you get better at those budget meetings, you're going to see those things coming. You're going to realize, okay, we're in a different season of life. Now we're about to have another baby. And so, we know that there's a financial change coming. So that budget meeting has to start reflecting that and preparing us for that. And so once we do that, we'll continue to get better and adjust those and adjust our expectations of what kind of spending or saving we can do in those seasons of life.
Got it.
And then problem number 3 is learning to combine 2 different philosophies of how to handle money. She grew up in a different family than I did. And so, they handled money differently than my family handled money. And, you can come from different demographic backgrounds. One of you could have come from a very wealthy family and one of you could have come from a not very wealthy family. And so seeing those and how you're raised is you have to bring that to the table. You're coming with your own set of views on money, and you have to figure out how how to make that work in a new relationship with someone else, because it's not just, obviously the way that I was doing it wasn't working well.
Mhm.
And so I needed Julie's perspective for us to be able to move forward and be successful.
Yeah, I think that goes back to communication, though. I think sometimes if you didn't talk about that before you're married, your upbringing and your parents' relationship with money and what it would mean to you, it's not too late to talk about it now. I mean, we just went on a road trip just a year ago, I guess it was. So even after 15 years of marriage, it was that road trip that we opened up even more about our upbringings and, and how, like I said, our parents viewed money or taught us or didn't teach us about money. And it was very enlightening to then, me understanding more of where Thomas comes from, even as a saver, and him understanding more of why I would be free to spend, because we kind of just did that, and we had all this fun growing up. And so just kind of going back, if you could open up more to your partner about your upbringing, it will help you understand why they're who they are, because there's so many more influencers into their opinion about money than just themselves, with like a mom and a dad or siblings or other people they're looking up to or they're not wanting to be. There's so many influencers and how we personally handle our finances.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. That reminds me, when my wife and I were engaged to be married, on a date night, someone gave us a blank budget, and we're like, great, we're going to get married. Let's plan our budget. We haven't talked about money at all up until that point, because it just magically appeared somehow. Anyway, just kidding. Anyway,
I wish.
It was the worst date night ever. Like, I was so frustrated. I'm like, what? It's going to cost us $1,000 a month to live? Yeah, right. Wow. Like, it was way more than that. But wow. Like, when I added it all up, I was so discouraged. Like, rent is this much, food is this much, like, then there's utilities and then fuel for gasoline, like in the car, and then like tuition and luckily I had scholarships and things like that helped, but my wife didn't. And then there's books, and then there's just lots of what if we want to have fun? Oh, there's I guess we can have fun on $5 a month. Like, it was really discouraging at the time, but so helpful because we had the conversation.
Yeah, well, and that doesn't even necessarily take into account if you're a young couple before you get married. Like, we were 20 and 19 when we got married, and so we were just barely out of high school, and so we
didn't know what we were doing.
That doesn't take into account what is insurance and what kinds of insurance do you need, how much do you need, is having a credit card a good idea or a bad idea? Mm-hmm. Do we need life insurance at 20 and 19 years old? Just different. What is a 401k? I mean, those things that we didn't even know that, I mean, I wish we would have known much more about back then. But, just you're
That's
talking
the saver
about
speaking. Uh-huh.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But, I mean, yes, you have to have that conversation, but there's so many things that you may not know as well that will factor in later. And so having the conversation as early as possible is important, and it's never too late to have the conversation, by the way. So as early as possible, but then once you have the first one, as frequently as your relationship allows and as frequently as it doesn't create tension.
Yeah. And honestly, if I could say, you don't have to jump to the numbers right away, because could be very depressing. Like you said, it was the worst date night ever. I would say maybe don't do it on a date night. This is a meeting. That's
right.
From the date night. But yeah, you don't have to jump to the numbers, because we coach people to start with your short-term and long-term goals. Open up about that first,
right.
And then you can figure out the numbers, because then you know what you're prioritizing and what you're willing to then maybe sacrifice.
Right.
Once you hear from your spouse on the direction they're thinking and what they desire, and short term being 6 to 12 months, and long term being 1 to 5 years.
Yeah.
That's where I would have couples start, and wish that we would have early on.
Yeah, agreed.
That is so good. These have been great tips. Are there any last tips you'd like to share?
What do you think? Communicate. I mean, I think that's
But
really
communicate honestly. That's what I'm
Yeah.
like.
exactly.
With-
Exactly. Communicate
Confront
honestly.
your fear. Like,
Yeah. What I was in fear of in our situation was Julie having to live with that fear. And I was in fear of the wrong thing, because what I should have been in fear of was keeping it from her. And, I should have been in fear of not having the help of my spouse who had vowed to be with me and for better, for worse, and sickness and health, for richer or poorer. And,
Right.
so I was saying, if you get to the core of it, I was saying, you know what? Our vows don't matter because my fear overtakes that. And so
then fear is
I
driving
should,
the marriage.
right.
Mhm.
I should
Yep.
have set the fear aside and said, hey, Julie, here's what's going on. I need your help. I need you to help me get through this and help us get through this. And so set your fears aside, communicate. And then, when all else fails, ask for help.
Very good. Great. Well, if people want to learn more about what you do and the resources you offer, which are awesome, by the way, what's the best
Thank
way for
you.
people to find you?
Our website's marriagepuzzle.com. There you can find our weekly podcast, and we are marriage coaches, so we can do sessions on that, and also financial coaches. And so all that's on marriagepuzzle.com or Facebook and Instagram at marriagepuzzle.
Very good. Great. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
This was fun.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode of Get Your Marriage On. And if you did, we would love it if you would take a few seconds to give us a rating on iTunes and to share the show with your friends. They'll thank you for life. Once you've done that, you can head over to getyourmarriageon.com for more resources about today's topic and to download our amazing marriage apps. Now go get your marriage on.